All right. So welcome everybody to the Masters Roundtable. For tonight, we will be discussing, continue to discuss the law of Sebek, the desire for knowledge. All right. So we'll talk about that. And one thing I want to apologize. I really tried since Tuesday to send the video and the accompanying document, but I don't know what was going on with Google, or maybe it was Chrome, but it would not let me select the names to send it to. So I had to deal with that 2 days in a row, and it finally let me do it last night when I almost forgot about it because I was so tired. So I got it in late. So my apologies for getting that out late. And so hopefully you guys got a little bit of time to review it. I just recently sent the documents. I was reminded by King 300 BC. He reminded me about the PowerPoint documents, the slides, to send you guys to take notes on. So I sent those as well, so you guys can look for that email. It should be accompanying the same email I sent the link in for the to access the recording. So it should be I resent it in that same email. All right. So hopefully you guys got that, and hope everybody's doing fine. The week's been okay. I've literally been tired. I literally been tired and still tired, and don't look like it's going to let up anytime soon, because I got an entire weekend starting tomorrow where we are doing a spiritual retreat at Caraz, partially at Caraz and partially at some castle in Hollywood. And so we'll be experiencing some things like the ceremonial medicine, ayahuasca, as well as bufo. Bufo is actually like a toad venom, and I'm really not looking forward to that. So I'm the ayahuasca. I think I'm ready for that one, but not the bufo. But we'll see. I may have to skip that bufo. Just in my own research, it's not really good to do two different types of powerful medicines like that so close together. But I know people do it, but in the research, it just doesn't yield good results. So I think I may hold off on the bufo, all right, and experience the ayahuasca. So anyway, it's just so I can speak intelligently about it. I've held space for people who have done this at my studio. We do medicine ceremonies there, and we do medicine ceremonies like the ayahuasca is out, as well as the mushrooms. So we hold space for people. We get groups of people come in, and they do that. It's kind of an all night kind of thing, so it's some people are going through some things, and those things really let you know. So what I want to do is open up your mics and everything, and let's get to talking about if you had time to think about what we talked about on Saturday, if you had time to think about some of the material, if it's something that you need clarified, then please let's deal with that. Now, I first like to start by examining the law of Sebek, which states that it is not what is being affirmed, it is who is affirming. Are you a human or divine being? All right, so it is not what is being affirmed, it is who is affirming. Are you a human or divine being? What does that sound like to and anybody can answer this. What does that sound like to you? How does that come across to you? Anybody want to offer their own meaning towards that particular law?
Would you say it again?
Yes. It is not what is being affirmed, it is who is affirming. Are you a human or a divine being? That's the law. So
Well,
anybody want to? Yeah, go ahead, brother.
for me, you know, um, man, you know what? I'm just too excited for that question, and I'm actually walking, so it feels good. I wish I was sitting down a little, but that I got a lot for it. But I'm actually the thing that's the being that's walking right now in the presence. I'm on my way to home, so just want to let everybody know I appreciate y'all for being here, and that's a good one, Dion. And my mind right now, and I'm out here, I'm in the mix, and I got a little ways, couple hours to get home. And
Okay.
I
All right.
won't. I would love to keep the listening ear out, and just so the rest of the
Okay. It's some might come to you when when somebody else unload. I'm pretty sure you'll get some kind of bite there, and yeah, absolutely. All right. All right, brother Raheem, you have anything you want to put out there?
Yep.
Excuse me.
Yeah. Peace and love, family.
Peace and love, brother.
That's a really good question for me. That for this week, I think I text you and asked you what the importance of uh, detaching from all things objective. And the question helps me to understand that everything human is objective. But when I identify with my issues and stuff, I'm always dealing. When I'm looking at it, I've noticed. I'm recognizing now how I be dealing with the human issue. I'm looking at the objective first versus going within, seeing my divine self. And I don't. I'm aware of it through this work and through this work being here with you. I'm becoming a more aware of it, but I don't know. If you ask me how am I the divine being, the triune being, and all the triune thing, I'm growing into an understanding of how that works and how we are divine beings. But um, it's for me that was like, wow, I'm not human, and it's and I'm kind of seeing. I've been sharing with people how when we have this week, when we lose a loved one and transition, we say they're in a better place now. But we still crying over their bodies, going visit the graveyard like they're still there and this and that. And I'm like, well, if they're in a better place, what is that place? What is
Yeah.
that better place, a divine place? And I can't explain what that is, but this work is helping me to be more open-minded and see that that's what I need to focus on these laws and how it can help me to be more of a divine, understand how I am a divine being.
Uh-huh. Okay. Excellent. And we're gonna talk about this because I really want to know if you guys understand the difference between, understand that the human is still a part of our being. It's just not the part of the self. Okay? It's not part of the self, the true self. It's part of the not self, but it is part of our total being. All right. So you just have to understand that that it is more so like the vessel within which we step, in order to have experience within creation, within the world. And so when we talk about the world, we're not just talking about Earth, but we're talking about all of creation is the world. Okay. So, but when we talk about affirmations, when we talk about affirming something, remember what our definition, what affirm is. Anybody remember that?
To make strong.
To make strong, right? To strengthen, to make strong, to firmly fix something. And what does that mean to you when you hear that? To firmly fix something, to make something strong. What does that mean to you?
I know it means to me that it's something that help you to grow, to evolve, become better. To basically something that you could gain experience from, or at least observe what's going on out in society or just out in the world.
Okay. Well, when we talk about to make something strong, to firmly fix something, to strengthen something, we're talking about from a level of belief, right? From a level of belief, something that we think, something that we, go from thinking and believing into a version of knowing. And we get to that point through experience. So once you experience something, there is a conviction that comes along with that. And in a conviction is when something is firmly rooted and you're strong. It's like that you know this is what it is, right? So when we're talking about, so this is when we come into the word knowledge. So this is what the law of Sebek is. It satisfies our desire for knowledge. So our desire to know versus to believe. Many of you have been Christians, and a lot of the reason why you left Christianity is because you felt like you was lied to. And this is generally, I'm not talking about you specifically, but generally the reason why a lot of Black folks are leaving Christianity is they feel like they were lied to because they were coerced into believing the dogma within that particular religious system. So they were believing that there was a savior coming back to get you. They were believing that there was a so-called God in the sky that can get jealous, that can take on all these attributes of a human and still call himself God. They were believing that all of this stuff had happened, but when they found that, wait a minute, this stuff is just a belief. And so the people who have left because of that are the people who are not interested in believing. They're seeking to affirm something because that they understood that even you look at what's his name, Ray Hagan, he couldn't even, as a pastor himself, he couldn't even firmly back up and validate the stuff that the Bible was talking about. And it's not that it's not invalid. I just think it's improperly placed. It's not that it's invalid. It's just improperly placed. And even in my search, I stumbled across its true source. I stumbled across its true source and found that it is a historical record. And I don't know if that historical record can be taken literally, but it seems to have a lot to do still with all of our Kemetic history and everything that's unfolded. So it's not to be thrown out, it's just to be put in place. So, and I think the way that it was actually articulated, behind the pulpits of Christian institutions was in a way that brought about dogma because nobody knew its true origins because they didn't search anywhere beyond the Bible. And the Bible is just the notes that are taken from the actual source. It's just the notes that are taken, and then there's some sprinkling of opinion and also some crafty formulation of how things come in the order that it comes. And I say crafty because they want to make sure that whatever it is they're trying to coerce you into believing, that you believe it. It's true indoctrination. So, so this is what we're talking about, moving to a point to where we begin to search for truth because we want to know truth, instead of just being coerced into believing something that somebody is saying. That is indeed what the Sebekian faculty is about. It actually makes people believe something from a hearsay standpoint. All right, so that's why it caters to the left hemisphere of our brains, so we can take what is said as truth. All right, so that becomes a problem. It's a source of all problems in the world right now because nobody does any true fact checking. Yeah, go ahead, King 300 BC.
So, I was listening to that one right there. That kind of activated, one of them things up there on top of that brain. But so what I get from the human being and then a divine being, me knowing from my experience that I was a human being at one point, and then the divine being. Now I only can speak on the divineness of me, because once the divineness came in, it was no more glitches of the human being no more. It was no more deception. It was no more. I don't have to search, or I don't have to look around and see, oh, are they right? Are they right? Oh, is the Muslims, Christian, or Jehovah? You know, at that point, I was human. But now everything that comes to my vessel as I walk, that's not of this world, I take it, and then I activate it to give it off to the humans to make sure that it's divine. So whenever it comes and I can't walk to a person that I never met in my life, a new person on the earth, no matter if they mad, angry, or sad, and they come to me with them emotions, and I can't cipher the emotions to give back good feelings and give back good emotions off a negative, then I'm not walking divine. So now as I'm walking, all the feelings of the humans will let you know if you still a human being or you divine. The humans gonna put you to the test. And I'm on these buses in Los Angeles every day. So my divinity kicks in because of the people attack the flesh to see if you are still truly human being, because any attack that comes in the universe, it won't bother you. It'll come to you as that's a confused human. They might always be an object. They might never get to the awakening state. So it's okay. It's okay to understand that human might just be in a certain state of mind and might never get the awakening. The awakening is not me walking up to them, putting them in the microwave, pressing a button for 3 minutes. Because if that was the case.
Yeah, let me ask you this. So are you it sounds like you're distinguishing, like there are people who you would call human versus there are people who you would identify as divine. Are you saying that there is am I hearing that clear?
Yeah, the divine.
Okay.
The divine individuals emotionally inside of my body, they won't never attack me. It will never be a disturbance inside of my body when I run into them. Because our contact is not the physical part. I can see you across the street, a divine being. We'll contact in the spirit with each other emotionally. And I'm set in like, oh man, I got to go over there and say hello to them. Something just happened. You know, so I wave either across the street, or when I get over there, I say, what's going on, sister? What's going on, brother? So I know that person is awakening. But the attack of the human comes when I feel that urgency of I got to respond back. And I say, oh, no, it's okay. That person could be confused.
Gotcha. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that difference also when it comes to affirming something, when it comes to taking those things that we believe about ourselves versus those things that we come to know about ourselves. You know, so right now we just heard King 300 BC. He believes that he's a divine being. Like this is something he's come to know in his experiences. Has anybody else arrived at that conclusion about themselves?
I think I have arrived at that. I don't know how to activate that divine being yet.
Okay. All right, that's honest. I like that. Because what we're talking about, again, remember, everything exists in degrees, right? In degrees. What I mean by degrees is that everything exists on this scale. All right. So even when it comes to the difference between a poison and a medicine, it could be the same thing. This one item that can either be a poison or medicine, and without changing it. Only thing you're changing is its presentation. How much of it are you taking? And that can determine whether it's healing you or killing you, right? So we take something, even like, let's just say vitamins, although it's never been proven in history that anybody has died of an overdose of vitamins. But we look at vitamins like vitamin A, vitamin E, vitamin D, and these things, if you can overdose on them, and they can become toxic in your body because they are fat soluble. Now, when they've accumulated to a certain degree in the body, they become a toxin. But when they're at just the right levels, they become healing components. They become metabolic components of what we call homeostasis, to provide balance, to avoid disease and things like that. But people are so deficient in those things, and always have been. So this is what we've always had trouble getting enough of these vitamins. That's why nobody has ever been harmed by them. But yes, they can become, to a certain degree, they can become a toxin rather than something that actually keeps our body healthy. All right. So when we talk about now, we talk about the human and the divine being. Now, these are the same being, but the conscious scale, the level of awareness of self would determine what part of that scale that you're actually operating on. Okay. So are you still operating on the end of that scale that still only allows you to function as a human? Or have your consciousness grown enough to where you can operate as a divine being? The goal is for us to operate fully as a divine being. That's the goal. All right. So what does that mean then? What does that look like? All right. That looks like understanding that the human itself is influenced by emotionality, sensuality, and its desires, what it likes and what it dislikes. This is what drives the human. These are the three things that drives the human. Okay, so emotionality, sensuality, and desire. Okay, so when those are the things that are these are the urges that come from the vessel itself. All right, they come from the vessel itself. I've already shown you chemically that emotions are developed inside of the body, not the true self, right? And as a result, there is sensuality based on what it is that so based on what it feels, there's a level of satisfaction that it wants according to what it wants to feel. All right, so this is that sensuality. All right, and then there is a desire, whether it likes it or dislikes it. And human decisions are made based on those three things. Those three, that influences the human. All right, now
say the three things again.
Okay, so emotionality, sensuality, and desires. So if you are still being driven by those three things, then you are still operating within your human self. Your consciousness has not gone past the human self. And that's okay, because again, that's a stage that we all come here in that stage. The goal is to transcend it. We're here to transcend that stage. So by expanding our consciousness, expanding the awareness of who we are, then once we do that, the divine being is influenced by truth and law and order. Those are the three things that influences the divine being: truth, law, and order. You see? So these things are important to understand the differences between the human and the divine being. So once we understand those things, then we know exactly where we are. But also, once you understand them, you know what it is that you're reaching for. So you're reaching for a point to where you are no longer influenced. Your thoughts, feelings, and actions are no longer influenced by emotionality, sensuality, and your desires. Okay, that's the point that we're trying to get to. And we understand that those are some very powerful influences, very powerful. The reason why is because our outer experiences are made up of those three things. All right, it's all about how we feel. It's all about how we want to feel. And it's all about the things that we want to attain and the things that we don't want around in our lives. All right. So yes, Raheem, I can get you that King 300 BC. I'll get you that. I don't have a chart right now, but I will get it to you. All right. That's a good idea to make up a chart for it. Go ahead, Brother Raheem.
Yeah, question was the same. The way of looking at, you said that I got the three things that drive the human, but the other that were for the divine being were what? I got were the truth, the law, and order, but they were, how did you say they were attributes of the divine being or whatever?
Yes, that's the attributes of that's the influence. Actually, that's what influences the divine being is truth, law, and order.
Okay, influence. That was the word I was looking for.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah. So ultimately, that's the difference between the divine being and the human. What is influencing the thoughts, feelings, and actions of each one of those conscious states? So the human being is when you're still identifying with those urges, when you're still identifying with the way you feel. I am angry. Remember, you have to be very careful of what follows I am. I am angry. I am sad. I am worried. I am an angry person, or I'm a what people say. I'm a what's that word when they I'm a blunt person. I say what's on my mind, as if that's a cool thing to do. So the thing is, and also remember that all of that, because there's a whole nother entity that we're talking about that's actually pulling that influence from that physical vessel, and that's called the ego. How we want to be seen by others. That's what's seeking identity. We want to be seen a certain way. All right, so that's also important. That you have to, that's actually something you got to give up in order to express and start to live and operate as a divine being. Ronald, is that still a new hand, or is that the old hand that was up?
Old hand.
Okay, I got you. Go ahead. King 300 BC, you kept putting your hand up, and then go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it was funny that I started off using a lot of words that you were saying. Like, I think in the first part of my life, which I see a lot of humans that's still involved, they fight more with words on the outside, and then they run from the true feeling in the inside. Mm-hmm. I captured the inside, and that is truly by just being celibate, no drinking, no smoking, and following my teachers fully. Not so, they ain't my dad, or they ain't my uncle, or they ain't my blood. No, I followed Diamond like greater than the woman that raised me and 10 kids. I say, Grandma, now as a man, you never was a man. I got to make some room for Diamond, because what God delivered his purpose here for, I got to pray to ask you, is Diamond allowed to sit in the chairs? My grandma, my great grandma, they got thrones. They sitting on thrones because of what they gave me. So they were honored to give Diamond a throne. They were honored to give Diamond a throne to lead my vessel, because Diamond ain't gonna lead my vessel to destruction. So the first thing that I got over, so I can stop fighting on the outside with words, was first take the divine being that's walking in the earth and put him in a seat where when he speak, I'm a student in multiple classes, but I'm a student of life and the vessel. So I let Diamond take my vessel, and I believe in him deeply that he'll guide me in the right direction. And then all the rumors on the outside, when a person speaks and then they go back and forth and then they do a word fight. It's like a word fight. Who's going to say the best word? Who's going to do it best? How it's going to sound? But then when everybody go home and they sit in the house, the inside start killing them. You can't really sleep. You tossing and turning. Because I've been through it. You know, I put the show on for the streets and a whole group of people. I'm like, yeah, pants on. I'm all cool. And, you know, I punked him with my words. You seen that, bro? You know, I did it. So I'm only speaking from what I did. And now I speak from the inside of grabbing and harnessing my inside and not allowing, like I can feel water. When I drink water, I can feel it actually trickling down in my body. And then my body responding like, thank you. Like that's the most important thing of my life now is my body thanking me from all the years that I destroyed it, drinking a whole gallon of Henny, all the pounds of weed. You know, it is thanking me now. And I can feel it when I put the lemon and the lime in it, it's thanking me.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to say.
I appreciate you, King. You know, again, it's important that we, that we got our youth. The young man is about to be 30 years old right there. That's our future. All right. So it's important that we are the ones that inspire and influence them. So I really appreciate the brother. You know, he's in contact with me all the time. He always checks in and everything. I really appreciate the young brother and everything. So thank you, man. Thank you. And because I know he's been through a lot. He has been through a lot. So we'll have to get into his story one time so you guys can understand what our youth are coming from. But when we're talking about from the bowels of hard time, this young man has come from there. So there's a reason why he's excited for a difference in perspective, why he's excited for that, you know. And when we see our youth climbing out them pits, we must offer them a helping hand. You must offer them a helping hand, you know. So this is how we also keep contributing to our own future. All right. So I wanted to say this too, that one of the things that it was literally in line with what King 300 BC was just saying about the words we use, about the things that we're told, and the things that we tell ourselves. I want to remind all of you that words are spells being cast. That's whether somebody's saying it to you or you saying it to yourself. No matter what it is, it's a spell being cast. Let me show you this thing I just made, and I just put it on Facebook because it was something that came to me. I got this email from a Rosicrucian order of the Rosicrucian order, actually. And this is what they so this is the hold on. I don't know why that thing always jumps down like that. All right, here we go. All right, can you guys see that? Let me get this out the way and make sure this is not can you guys see that?
Yeah.
All right. So it says, so this is something I had just read. I said, I just read that the price of greatness is sacrifice and struggle. But I have actually learned that the gateway to greatness is personal offering and transcendence. All right. So the verbiage we use determines what spells we cast on ourselves. All right. So this is in response to that was even coming from an order that is privy to wisdom. But the Rosicrucians is a white order. They study a lot of the Egyptian history, and I'll say Egyptian history. Mostly what they're focused on is the time period that they're focused on is from an 18th dynasty forward. Right. And they also let you know it's a lot of, and when I say forward, I mean all the way into and past the 25th and 26th dynasties. You know, we're talking about at the time of the Greco-Roman rule there in ancient Kemet, when it became Egypt. You see, And and it's okay. But what I want, could you hear when you talk about sacrifice and struggle? When you think about those words, what kind of energy does it send to your body? To sacrifice and struggle. Those are they could be very negative in the way that you digest them. We've been told that by the Christians that we are here to struggle. Struggling is a response to challenge. You don't have to choose struggling. You struggle because you don't know. You struggle because you believe instead of know. You struggle because you're allowing someone to tell you instead of you knowing for yourself. That's a struggle. When you have not affirmed for yourself, that's why you struggle. So you can transcend struggle. And then sacrifice is literally giving up things that you don't want to give up. This is why I said, instead of the price of greatness, instead of saying that, it's the gateway to greatness. So we don't pay a price for greatness. What we're really doing is entering into a great gateway, because that's a willful and voluntary thing. You don't get to greatness unless you volunteer for it. So it's not a price you pay, it's a gateway through which you walk. And that is through personal offering instead of sacrifice. I'm offering this. Because if this is the thing that's keeping me from experiencing and functioning in my greatness, then I'm going to give it up anyway. So it's not a sacrifice. It's easy for me to get this up because my desire for greatness is greater than my attachment to this thing. So it's not a sacrifice. I'm not trying to hold on to this, and I'm giving this thing up willingly. All right. So it's a personal offering. And then transcendence. So instead of struggle, I am transcending the things that are holding me back. I'm not struggling to give them up. I'm not struggling to get to the next thing. I am willfully transcending them. You see? So we have to be careful of the words that we use. All right, we have to be very, very careful of the words we use, because we do cast spells on ourselves by the words that we use. All right, and by the words that we're being told. So part of this course, even as we traverse into the higher levels of this course, I want you to understand how to truly listen to what people are saying, and how to keep their words out here, pick them apart before you take them in. So you see on the Matrix, when the way that Neo stops those bullets, when they fire all those guns, and then he just puts his hand out and all those bullets just stop in midair. That's the way I want you to treat people's words. Just stop it right there, examine them, and only pick the ones that work for you. The other ones, let them drop off. Let them drop off. So when you remember, Neo had to realize that he's the one before that could happen. He had to start walking in his divinity before that could happen. All right? So this is what's to be understood. So because that wasn't the way at some point, when we talk about our metaphorin, the Osirian metaphorin, when Set took over the kingdom. Now the kingdom is your soul. That's the kingdom. And Set, evil intention, discord, has taken over the soul. And remember that Apep is the son of Set. All right? He's the son of Set. And then Apep himself has 29 names. He comes in 29 other forms. that you must learn to recognize. And then the way that Set really got a hold of the kingdom is he recruited or employed the Sabekian faculty so that they can now be controlled by the left hemisphere of the brain. So cause them, just like we learn in Christianity, not to question anything. Y'all remember that? We weren't supposed to question God. We weren't supposed to question the Bible, the word. We just had to take it like it is. What do you think they're doing there? They are developing, exercising, and conditioning the left hemisphere of your brain so that you can take hearsay as truth. And then they'll freeze you in your tracks so that you're afraid to go and look and to test what they're saying. Now, I want y'all to understand, though, Christianity and Jesus the Christ are not synonymous. They are not synonymous. Christianity came along 300 years after the said death of Christ. After Jesus had died on the cross, it was 300 years later that some people said, you know what? I'm going to start a cult according to this guy. And I'm saying this because I don't want y'all bashing. Don't bash Jesus. It ain't Jesus' fault. They just took some things that Jesus said and built a whole religion around it. There were no Christians on the planet when Jesus was present. So I want y'all to understand that. And also, you understand that between the age of 12 and 30, where was Jesus learning? And remember, his name was Yehoshua ben Pandera, not Jesus. So let's get that correct. Yehoshua ben Pandera. And he was actually in the libraries of Egypt, of Kemet, learning at that time. So the very same things that you are pursuing, that same knowledge that you're pursuing, is what Yehoshua ben Pandera had mastered and became an ascended master himself. So we can clear that up to stop chasing whether or not Jesus was real and whether or not Christianity is, and all this not hating Jesus and speaking against, not here. We can't do that because that's ignorance. That's ignorance. And how do I know? Because I did my homework. Okay, I did my homework. And if you want to know more about it, let me give you another book reference. So I can show it to you real quick. There it is. So this book right here, this is a book by Gerald Massey. Gerald Massey, and it is The Historical Jesus and the Mythical Christ. Somebody who actually went on, and mind you, I want you to understand something, that Gerald Massey is a white man who has taken the time. First of all, he stood against the white Egyptologists who were trying to whitewash all of the black greatness in Egypt. He said, it was Gerald Massey that said, why are y'all lying? These were black folks. Gerald Massey said that to his own colleagues, right? So of course they try to get rid of him. They try to silence him and everything. And even in Christianity, he went and he dug real deep to find this. He went on a very deep and far journey to find this mythical or this historical Jesus that they said had existed. He could not find Jesus, not by that name, but when he done comparisons of what is said in the Bible and the time period based on who was ruling at the time that the Bible had mentioned, and then some of those events, he actually found actual historical records of some of those things actually happening. And he placed the names together and said, and he came to a conclusion, this is who they're talking about. That was Yehoshua ben Pandera. That's who they was talking about. Everything matches. Everything they was talking about as far as Jesus goes, it was him that actually lived these things. All right. So I want y'all to understand this. It is imperative that we stop the small talk. We stop the small talk and get back into knowing for ourselves. This is what the right hemisphere of the brain does. It goes and it does its own research. It doesn't just take in what other people are saying. It goes and says, well, let me go in and check and see if it matches up. Okay? So this is what we have to understand. So if you want this this particular book, I do highly recommend it. I'm actually still reading it. It's dense, although it's a thin book, but it's one of those books. It's just like this book, Ma'at, the 11 Laws of God. It took me, this book is thin. Look how thin this book is. Can y'all see how thin it is? It took me 2 years to unpack this book. 2 years. Reading it almost every day, but definitely every week I was in this book, and it still took me 2 years to unpack it. It's because, and the reason why is because I dared not move forward without understanding what it was I just read. I dared not do that. But this right here, this book, and this is by Ra Unefa Amen, and I highly recommend you get this book, because this still is everything that we're talking about. The tree of life, as you can see, Ma'at, and the 11 laws. This is going to lay it all out for you. All right. I know it's hard to see it, so I'll have to try to give you guys send you guys some images of it. Okay, so or you can go look for it online. So Ma'at, the 11 Laws of God by Ra Unefa Amen. All right, and also the Historical Jesus and the Mythical Christ by Gerald Massey. Okay, by Gerald Massey. You know, look these up. In fact, it was my Baba Hannibal from New York, who actually told me to get that book, and he gave me a bunch of assignments out of it. So that's part of the reason why too I'm actually reading. I got so many, all his lectures and everything. So yeah, there's the book. Aminka's holding up the book there, so you can see it better. I got too much lighting going on right here. You know, I absorb light rather than reflect it, so I had to have all this light to light me up. So this is important. It's important that we get this understanding for ourselves, but also, and I'm still hearing, and I know, and look, this is not I don't want you guys to think this is not a shot to all of you, all of our elders, and I'm saying everybody who's older than me, and I'm you know, giving much thanks that you're here, but also I also want to make sure that you understand that I respect what you've gone through, because if you lived, I had just missed the civil rights era. I was born after, a few years after the death of Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. I was born in the 70s, in fact in 73. So everybody who lived in the 60s and beyond, you know, before then, you know, you were still in the heat of the civil rights era. And so I understand the mindset. I actually had to tell my client, who's a white person, whose parents came to visit him and his family. And he expressed to me that his pushback was, I love my mom and dad, but what I don't like is when they come talking their racist stuff in front of my children. Now his mom and dad, they're in like their 80s and 90s, right? And they still talk like, oh, you know, they use the N-word and they talk about them And you know, they talk like those civil rights white folks. Okay, they talk like them. And I told him, I said, he said, I don't want my kids, you know, digesting any of that. I said, I don't think they will. I think you have a bigger influence on your kids than your parents do. And you know, these are some very nice white people. They don't have a racist bone in their body. They really don't. He really can't stand it. That's why he don't like for his parents to come visit. But what I told them, I said, you know, they can't. You have to understand that this is not just an idea that they have. This was a narrative that they lived. It was an actual narrative that they lived. I said, and adversely, my elders lived that narrative on the other side. I said, so even them, because they live that narrative, they feel a certain way about white folks. You know, I said, so I'm not here to change their mind, because I can't tell them that what you experienced wasn't real. It was real. They went through some things. I said, but what we do at this point, you know, from my generation on, is that we begin the mending process, and begin because now that flash of the civil rights is over, which was a culmination of we talking about a whole bunch of things after slavery. Well, if we talk about during slavery, then after slavery is when racism really took on. But during slavery, we were slaves, so it was pretty obvious what our position was. But then after slavery had ended, this is when they got upset and were like, well, I don't want to share this and that with them, and I don't want them having the same opportunities as me, because they still saw my ancestors as livestock, nothing more than cows and pigs. Why are we don't want them eating at the table with us. They're filthy. They are filth themselves. So this was a narrative that they lived with. They had convinced themselves that we were less than human, you know, and that was reverberated and regurgitated from one white sector to another. You know, so either way it goes, they didn't see us as human beings, let alone recognize our divine potential. So now that the flash, after all of that, and we're just barely 157 years outside since the day that they said that since the day that the Emancipation Proclamation went into effect, 1863, January 1st, 1863. And remember, and it still took them 2 more years to 1865. In fact, 2 years, 6 months, and 19 days for them to recognize in Texas, you know, that this law that has been passed. So they illegally held people hostage and imprisoned them against their will for that long, and nobody ever was held accountable for that. So at that point, it was illegal. After 1863, January 1st of 1863, it was illegal federally to have slaves. But there were some in Texas, and I think there might have been some somewhere else, that still had slaves. And nobody has ever been brought to justice for that. So that still lets you know what kind of system we were living in, right? So then even they violate their own rules. But now it is time for us to, now that we know who they are, who we are, it's time for us to really solidify who we are and get back to being who we are. You know, I was talking to an elder guy today. He was still talking about, yeah, man, but we got to let them know. We got to do this, and we got to let them know. We got to fight this and fight that. And I said, no, thank you. I'm not interested. The only thing I'm interested in is being. And as long as I am perfecting being, they will see who I am. And they will have no choice but to acknowledge my example. No choice but to. That's where we are now. Anything else is a distraction. We've passed, these were nothing more than stages that we went through. So I don't need to fight anybody because who they say that I am. I already know who I am. I don't need to fight you over that just because you're wrong. That's you that got the equation wrong. You know, I know the answer. So this is the thing that we have to understand. This is where we are. That's the danger of this Sabekian faculty going in the wrong direction and not being put in check. And we are still under its influence even today. This is why it takes the first 28 years of life to fully develop those two faculties of the imagination and the intellect. The first 28 years of life, and when we're talking about to develop them, is to finally get to the point to where we no longer have influence from others. To where we're now finally trying to put things together for ourselves and then building on what we have learned about ourselves. But again, this is why it's important that we must educate our own youth. Because what they end up with by the time they're 28 years old will determine how they function from that point forward if they don't get the right information. So we have to take control again of our what our youth is subjected to musically, artistically, not just for music, but visual art, and also which counts as movies, sitcoms, and social media stuff. So we have to get that, because that's all information going into their intellect. Is going to have an effect on what it is and what it is that they think, how they feel, and how they act. All right, it's going to have an effect on all those things. So we must get rid of the dogma, and we have to see it for what it is. It's all dogma. Today's music in the Black community is trash. Straight dookie. Okay, I'm just calling it like it is. All right, and it does have a very powerful and strong effect on our youth. And I think I had mentioned to you guys before that in Kemet, you could not, unless you were spiritually initiated, you could not share your art with the public. So your music, your visual art, or any of that, your poetry, you kept it to yourself. You had to check in with the government before you were allowed to share it with the public, because they understood that art has a conscious and psychological influence, a very powerful one. It puts people in trance. And trance will be the next topic of our next session. It puts people in trance. And so it speaks directly to their subconscious, which is speaking directly to their spirit and programming it through these tools that we're talking about. All right. So anybody have anything they want to add, or anything they want to clarify?
I have a question, maybe a comment.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a question. Do you think Martin Luther King, because he died like, I was 11 months and 9 days old when he died.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think he was pretty much working off on the idea of what you're saying as far as having peace? Because then you have Malcolm X, who was about fighting, and you said that you don't have to fight for anything, you know who you are. So who do you think was right? Was it Martin Luther King or Malcolm X?
Well, let me. A lot of times, when we focus on Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, we see them at the apex of their expression. So at that midpoint. All All right, so there was a point to where they were building up to who we know them as. Malcolm X, the militant one, and Martin Luther King, the peaceful demonstration. But there was a point to where even though they came up at opposite ends of those poles, but Martin Luther King at some point understood that being passive in peace was no longer going to work. And it was right before he performed the I Have a Dream speech. All right. It was right before he performed that, and also done his acceptance speech of the Nobel Peace Prize. So if you go back, listen to that speech, go and look it up and listen to that speech and listen to the words that he says. All right. And then there was Malcolm X who came up militant, and he was way on that militant side. But then after his travel to Mecca, and he became El Hajj Shabazz, then there was a change somewhere. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King met in the middle. They agreed. They actually met and shook hands and said, we can work together, right before they died. America knew it was not ready for that. You see, so both of them had to come off their extreme views of peace and militancy. They had to find balance. So they too were going through a process. And right when they got to it, which is what this is now Heru waking up after his divine counsel from Jehudi. Now, mind you, that yes, Martin Luther King was about peace. In fact, what they said was Martin Luther King was actually more so a Ma'atian than anything. A Ma'atian masquerading as a Christian preacher. All right. So yeah, so they understood these things. So they both started out a little skewed, but in their acts, in their endeavors, they ended up right there in the middle. And Martin Luther King had to toughen up, and Malcolm X had to come off that militancy a little bit, because he even opened it up and said, white folks, we'll accept you and let you work with us. Whereas he said before, he said, no, we can't let nobody infiltrating this movement. That's what he said. All right. Yes, Asantiwa. Yeah, unmute yourself, beloved. Asantiwa, unmute yourself.
Hi.
There you go.
Okay. I just wanted to say that I remember in our prior class where I was discussing some things that was challenging. And this week I decided to change and concentrate on what I wanted to happen versus what is not happening. And when I put my mindset on that, this whole week, everything was working in divine order. Everything I needed was falling in place. And it was like I was following instructions from a higher. Do this, do that, start this. And that went on for 2 days. And everything that I needed to accomplish just fell right in line.
I did.
Okay. And I was able to finish. I was able to finish everything in a half day because, well, I started early, like 7 o'clock. But I'm just saying that my whole mind was concentrated on everything that I wanted to have happen, everything what I wanted to fall in place, and it did. So I thank you for that too.
Excellent, excellent. Well, there you go. Excellent.
Yes.
So that's what it is, and you know, we've been told all of our lives that what we put our minds to, we can accomplish. And the shame in that is that it's never been thoroughly explained, and it's still became just as much of a mystery as it sounded like when Brother Ray just said, you know, I acknowledge my divine beingness. I just don't know how to activate it. So we understood that what we put our minds to, but nobody was telling us about those things that kept our minds from activating what we were trying to accomplish according to the thoughts, because we were doing more to inhibit those things from coming into fruition than anything. And then we get frustrated because we be thinking like, of course I was thinking about winning $1 million, but I didn't win. I didn't win. So why didn't I win if that was the truth, and so forth, you know? And remember that it's what's in the subconscious that's going to have the say so over what manifests. Another reason why we have to take control over the contents of our intellect. We have to take control of the contents of our intellect, which also takes control and determines the contents of our imagination. And that in turn will govern and determine what quality we want to add to this idea, the quality itself being the emotion, the energy, and that energy or that quality is assigned to the spirit for manifestation. So if we're not careful and understand that formula and how how that flow chart goes, it happens like that without fail every single time. All right. So if we don't understand that, then we'll never ever take control of the most important parts. And the most important parts are indeed our imagination and our intellect, and control of our emotions. That's extremely important. So then now y'all know what the importance of this, of what should be the major focus of this particular course. What this course is trying to get you to do and realize is to take control over these things. All right, that's important. MJ, did you have another question? I saw your hand was up and then you lowered it.
Okay. I was just sitting here thinking, when you first got started in this idea and this study, of course you were brand new, and I just want to know, what did you do in the beginning to get yourself to really focus on being that divine person? Because sometimes I find myself, I'm still waiting for this divine. I say it, but it's like you said. I mean, if you don't believe it, then it's not really real. It doesn't come into fruition. It's like, what did you do? How did you make yourself? How did you transform? Because I'm here. I feel like it should be happening now. Well,
that's a very good question, and I'm happy you asked that. Now, because the thing about it is this: I was always a seeker of information, a seeker of knowledge. I wanted to know things, right? I've always done that. That's why I got my degree in engineering. That's why I didn't just settle for just exercising in the gym. I had to become a trainer, a physiologist, and a kinesiologist. I had to know, so I can understand these things, right? And even in my early ventures into what I would call self-awakening, the first thing I did was find out who I am as a Black man. And of course, I got pissed off just like everybody else and start having this thing against white folks. And I was saying all kind of militant things too. And my fist went up, everything. But it was when I was married, I had my wife and we had our children, and me wanting to be everything I could be for them. And I found out, and it was a bit too late, that I was getting in my own way. It doesn't matter that I was militant. It didn't matter that I knew all this stuff. It didn't matter that I can quote Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, and so forth. None of that mattered, because it didn't help me to be the person I needed to be the best father and husband I could be. It had nothing to do with that. Okay. So then what I ended up doing was then saying, there's still something within me that has nothing to do with all that I needed to know and then change. There were truths about myself that I needed to change that I didn't know. And it was based on the truth and what I had identified with as a Black man, as a father, and so forth, was based on outside information, was based on examples I had seen. It did not come from experience because I didn't have a father in my life, right? So I've seen all the worst, but I was like, maybe this is the way it's supposed to be done. This is the way that people show you that you love them, by making sure that you guide them and tell them what to do. Lead with an iron fist, in other words, because you ain't accepting nothing else. And so these are some things that I had to change. So by the time that me and my ex-wife, we had moved from Houston, Texas to Madison, Wisconsin. And she and I both were really seeking. We were really, really trying to figure out who we were, because we had already left the Christian church. We had already done that, right? So we both were seeking. So we had, she would get online and try to find out where we can go, oh, this sounds good. Let's go and check this out. This is something different, and let's see what they're talking about. So we went and did that, and I ended up with being a teacher for the Course in Miracles. Then we was like, okay, so that fizzed out real quick, and then we finally came across, I don't know how she came across it. I don't know if it was an ad or something, but it was talking about these ancient African teachings, and you had to come to class on Sundays at this place in Milwaukee. So we drove from Madison to Milwaukee, which is about an hour and a half drive, and we started going to those classes, and they pretty much were teaching me what I'm teaching you guys. I'm teaching you guys in way, way more depth than they were teaching me, but they were offering these classes just as a, letting you know this is what it's about. So we learned about Heru, learned about Osar, and so forth. And I was like, hey, I'm resonating with this. And but even at that time, by the time that time came, I still didn't know enough to learn anything about myself. This was in the first year that I had got exposed to this, but it wasn't soon enough to save my marriage. So shortly thereafter, we ended up separating and getting a divorce. That's when it really kicked in, because not just for the sake of that time, because my family was very valuable to me, and I knew if I ever came across the opportunity to have that again, I wanted to make sure that I'm already who I needed to be to secure it, because I recognized my mistakes within that. I just didn't know what to do about them. I didn't know what to do about my emotional tirades and my anger, my lashing out, because I thought I was doing out of love, and I thought this was the only way to express it and to get it done. I didn't know, but within this learning, so now I had to dive straight all the way in, because I was hurting, my heart was hurting, and so now it became a soul search for real. It wasn't just about knowledge, but this was about transformation, because I knew I needed to transform. It was at that time that this thing started to have this effect on me, when I knew I needed to transform. It wasn't just simply sitting down just to get the knowledge, but it was so I needed to get away from who I was. I needed to become something different, something new. And that itself is what transmutation is. When they talk about alchemy, it's taking something and making something new out of it. I knew at that time I had to go through an alchemical process, and I was in a phase of information that would allow me to do that. And it was all I had at that point. So I went all the way in and got fully initiated into it. So it has to be something that's outside of the intellectual realm while you're seeking this knowledge. You have to understand that you become a major player, once you realize that you are a major player in your reality and you have an effect on the reality of those around you, and if you truly love them, then you know that you want to be the best presentation that you can be. When you are truly open to that, this would have a different effect on you. So that's pretty much when I became it. I had to open myself up to it because I wasn't satisfied with who I was, because it was costly. It costed me something very important to me. And I just didn't want to do that again. I had to get out of my own way. So that's what this program shows you, is that you are indeed in your own way, and it's time to get out of your own way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what it's about, beloved. Not just here getting another set of information, but this is a true transformative experience. All right, does that answer it for you? You're muted.
I said, yes, sir. Ashe.
That's it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. But this is why too, like I say, it took me 2 years to read this book. This is the first book I got in Milwaukee. In fact, I don't know if you guys can see that. No, you can't see it. But let me see if I turn this down. Turn this down too. I got all this light on. Sorry, y'all. Guess what? I'm glowing here. But I know it just adjusted. Stupid camera. Anyway, right up here is words that Raul Nefer wrote in my book to me. He wrote in this book. This one and many of my other volumes that I have, he wrote things to me in the books. And I got to the point to where I needed to go in and take this thing so serious that I had to get next to the man who had the information. So this is when I offered myself to be directly taught and initiated by Raul Nefer Amen himself. See, there's that's what he wrote to me. You see, that was back in 2010. And I had already had the book for 2 years at that point. So I had the book since 2006. So I had it for 4 years at that point. And that was the year I was already well into being in contact and also in being initiated by Raul Nefer Amen. And he signed the book for me at that time. So this information has become important to you. Its application has to become important to you for some reason. So this is why many people are in possession of a lot of wisdom and a lot of knowledge and things like that, yet they still remain untransformed. I speak to people all the time that can probably out-talk me when it comes to the wisdom and knowledge, and they know this and they know that, but they are still untransformed by that. That's why I took the time the other week to show you guys how that looked from from the standpoint of your aura. Your vibration changes. That's what your aura reveals, is a difference in vibration. All right. So if that makes any sense to you guys. So this is what we have to understand, that this thing has to become important to us, important enough to use these tools, to understand it will become very important to you, what you fill your imagination up to, because that's your design studio. That's how you design your reality, is through your imagination. So you want to make sure that you deck that baby out with only the stuff that suits you. And then the information that you actually take from the outside, it also need to be only in something that works for that holistic picture that you designed. You see, so it's important to be careful of these subliminal messages that you take in from music, from media, from any other form of media, anything that could influence you, and be careful of falling into trance during these things. Falling into trance, again, which we're going to talk about more of in our next session of the meeting of the masters. All right. Anyone else have any questions for clarity or anything? Yes, MJ.
You just said be careful about what you hear or what you watch. Can you kind of, because I've heard that at church, church, be careful about what you read. Don't watch this. Don't do that. So can you because it all sounds the same.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. So main thing is the reason why I'm telling you this. You have to know where you are in your own consciousness, first of all, to know that you can easily fall up under the influence of certain information that's coming outside of yourself. Now, once you have grown into this understanding of your own self, because like now I can watch a scary movie, like what they call horror movies or what have you, and I could be okay. Because I would see I don't see them the same, so they don't even scare me anymore. I can look at a horror movie and see the spiritual aspect of it all and see what it's really saying. But somebody who has not, who don't have that level of understanding probably should not be looking at horror movies because it sends a whole different message to them. It actually increases their level of fear. Right? It intensifies their emotional urges through fear. Whereas I don't get the same effect because of my level of awareness at this point and what I have, the awareness I've initiated into. So this is why you have to be careful. First of all, know where you are in your own consciousness. Know what you can take right now and what you cannot take. There was a time when I wouldn't be listening to none of y'all, because I was in the beginning of trying to cultivate and understand my own peace. So I didn't have time, and nor was I interested in listening to somebody else's troubles and what they was going through. I actually told a very good friend of mine at that time, because all she did was complain. I told her I couldn't talk to her no more because I couldn't listen to complaints anymore. I didn't want to, because I was still trying to get my head above the waterline of my own discord so that I can find peace. And I felt like all she was doing was throwing the water on top of my head more, drowning me. So I couldn't listen to her. I couldn't listen to nobody else and the stuff that was so wrong with them, because I was still trying to find my own peace. Then once I found it and affirmed it, secured it, now I'm ready to listen to everybody else's stuff so I can help them with their stuff through the experience of transcending my own stuff. Now I can listen to them, you see? So this is why I say, because, at some point that stuff, and I remember too, when I was that militant guy and somebody comes around me and start talking about white folks wrong and white folks this and all the, oh man, we both sitting there pissed off together, because I'll be agreeing with you. Yeah, man, you're right. Now we didn't got all messed up and mad at white folks and haven't seen a white person in probably years. You see, we haven't even been around white folks and we pissed off at white folks because of the talk that we had with one another, because of where our mind was conditioned at that point. You see? But now when people come around me and they start talking that, then I understand where they are. I give them acknowledgement. Like, I understand where you are, but this is what truly matters. I can guide them to something else, and they're not ready to hear what I got to say. And I just say, you know what? It's okay. when you're ready for that higher perspective, I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. But I don't try to, because I'm not going to sit there and try to convince somebody when they're deep in that heat like that. Because I know when I was deep in that heat, you couldn't tell me nothing else. There was no way you could tell me nothing else. That's why I formed this particular course. And so the people who are looking and seeking that higher understanding, they come here, meet me here, then we can talk about it. Because I know at least you're ready to talk about something else. All right. So this is why I say, be careful of what it is that you listen to, what you look at, and things like that, because that's going to formulate things in your mind. And it's going to be according to the condition of your mind and the level of your consciousness. And if your mind and consciousness are at points of discord, then it's going to blow all of that. It's going to intensify all of that. And it can drive you mad. It can push you deeper and deeper into your own fears and emotional conditionings and things like that. So this is why I say that. Now, when you was in church, when they were saying, be careful what you listen to, they were just telling you not to go out, because we don't want you to listen to anything that's going to unindoctrinate you. Okay? We want you to only believe the stuff we've been telling you. So don't listen to nothing else. Don't question God. Don't go searching outside of the Bible. If you want to research, you research between Genesis and Revelation. That's what you do. Okay? That's what they meant. So this is what it is. And this is why, again, you have to know for yourself what it is that you want out of life. Amika and I, we was just watching, Amika's always watching some kind of dramatic show. But we was watching this show where it was a bunch of ladies or something caught up in polygamy. They where these white men had formed this thing called the Order, and to where they were among them, they were just having all these wives and and having babies with the wives, and then some of the babies, when they get to be about 14, they will only marry somebody else in that order. They could never marry or become the wife to somebody outside of that order. So they had all this stuff, but some of these young ladies start thinking that I don't want that. I don't want to have to get married to my uncle, my 40-something-year-old uncle when I'm 14. I don't want that. So they start thinking about what they want for themselves. So then they had to liberate themselves in some way from that order. They had to liberate themselves, run away. And then when they did so, of course, they could never speak to their family again. So I want you to realize something, that when you do liberate yourself from that old paradigm, from that old information, and you start to be deliberate about this new information, when you're seeking, it's gonna put you in a position to where you are now ousted from other people, from those that you care most about. They're not going to want to hear what you got to say anymore. You know how Christians, they'll be the first to tell you that if you ain't talking about Jesus, that means that you don't believe in God. It means that you are of the devil, and that you're involved in all kind of witchery. You light some sage, and they call it witchcraft. So they're not going to like nothing that you do. You see, so it's all important that you get your own mindset, what it is that you're after in your own reality, and pursue it by all means. Pursue it by all means. Yes, along the way, you're going to learn some things, and you might not end up with the same goal, and that's okay too. You might become more informed about what it was you were pursuing and change your mind, but at least it's an informed mind change. And then you pursue that new set of information that you're seeking. But one of these times, you're going to align yourself with the goal. And it's okay to change your goal, your mind and your goal along the way. That's why we'll tell everybody this ain't for everybody. And it's okay to be right where you are. It's okay. All right. Anybody else? Yes, Joel.
Would it be fair to say that the left hemisphere of the brain is the ego mind and the right side is the divine mind? Would that be fair to say?
Well, not necessarily. Not necessarily. That's not totally inaccurate either. But the thing, because they both, the right and left hemispheres of the brain can both be in service of the ego, because the ego itself is going to be, it's going to have its dominance depending on where the level of consciousness is. So they're inversely proportionate. As I said, when I described what influences the human, those three things, the emotionality, sensuality, and desire, that's what drives the ego. So if in the right and left hemispheres of the brain can be in service of the ego, bringing them those the satisfaction to those urges. You see, so it's a yes and, okay, yes and the fact is they both can be reassigned to be in service of the divine self.
Okay, I see. All right.
You see?
Yeah.
So it's about balance. When it comes to the divine self, it's about balancing the two.
Right. Okay.
Because remember, the influences of the divine self is, what did I say? Law, order, and what else? Truth.
True. Okay.
And when I say truth, I'm including understanding in that. Okay? Because truth leads to understanding.
All right.
Okay, and we can only get that when the left and right hemispheres of the brain are balanced, when they are actually working synergistically. And so now we've moved that important tool and that synergy away from the control of the ego and put it in the control of the divine self.
So it's all about balance then. Okay.
It's always about balance, beloved.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
It's all about balance. You're very welcome. All right. Anybody else have any questions or anything they want to be clear on? So what I'd like for you all to do, okay, is again, review, take your notes and everything on take your notes on from the recording, and on the document that I sent you. Did everybody who did not receive that? Everybody should have received it, but did you see it? Did everybody see the document?
What was the document about?
It's just the slides that I had shown in the last presentation.
Oh, okay. I haven't looked through it yet, so I'm gonna take a look and see.
I downloaded. There are 4 sets of slides. Is that about what you sent? Because that's what I had on my email.
No.
Yeah, well, it's about 18 pages basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
18 pages.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So so you can keep them in PDF form, and you can take your notes over the PDF. You can keep it, like, if you don't want to print them all out, which is fine. Okay. All right. Well, excellent. Well, again, I want to thank all of you again for allowing me this time to go into deep dialogue with you. And again, this is serving me so much, because it's not only a refresher, but it's keeping me committed and committed to this particular path, and to have to visit it in such a way to where I have to now articulate it means that I have to understand it even deeper than I had before. So we're all learning from each other here. We're all learning from each other. All right. So appreciate you all, and thank you all so much. And if there's no more questions or comments or anything, Anything anybody want to interject, then we'll conclude. All right, so last call for that. All right, excellent. One more thing about well, first before I say that, let me stop the recording. So, all right, so thank you, and we'll see you soon. All right.